All right, let's just jump right in. If you've ever worked in a small or mid-sized business, I bet you know this feeling all too well. You have a big strategy offsite, everyone's fired up, the whiteboards are covered in genius ideas, and then, a few months go by and nothing. Absolutely nothing has changed. It's so common and it is incredibly frustrating. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why that happens and, way more importantly, what you can actually do about it. Does this little cycle look familiar? It starts when the business just feels stuck, or maybe it's just total chaos. So what does leadership do? They call for strategy. You hold the workshops, maybe you even bring in a pricey consultant, and boom, out comes this beautiful polished deck. Everybody in the room nods, yep, this is it, this is the way. But then, real life happens. The calendar just completely takes over, day-to-day fires, customer emergencies, endless meetings, and that brilliant strategy deck, it just sits there collecting digital dust. And right here is where so many companies get it wrong. They think, well, I guess strategy just doesn't work for a company our size. But the whole point we're exploring here is that the strategy itself, the big idea, probably wasn't the problem at all. The real issue was the system, or really the lack of a system for defining it, for delivering it, and for weaving it into the day-to-day fabric of the company. So if the strategy plan itself isn't the villain of the story, then what is? We're about to get to the real diagnosis. And I think you'll find this is the key idea that can completely reframe how you look at this entire challenge in your own business. You see, the real issue is almost never a lack of good ideas. Come on, most smaller companies are full of them. The problem is hiding somewhere else entirely. It's your strategy delivery. It's all about the nuts and bolts, the mechanism that turns a great intention into an actual action. It is the bridge that connects the whiteboard brainstorming session to the Monday morning grind. And if you don't have a solid delivery system, even the world's best strategy is just, well, it's just expensive optimism. So how can you tell if you have a strategy delivery problem? Well, the clues aren't going to be in some PowerPoint deck. They're showing up in your daily operations. So as we go through this next list, just ask yourself, do any of these sound a little too familiar? Okay, these are the 4 big red flags. First, you've got priority churn. This is when the most important thing changes every other week, giving your entire team whiplash. Second, founder gravity. This is where the founder is like a black hole, pulling every single decision into their orbit, creating a massive bottleneck. Third, there's busy confusion. You know this one. Everyone is running around, working incredibly hard, but the company isn't actually moving forward. It's a hamster wheel. And finally, my favorite, metric theater, where you have dashboards and charts, but nobody really trusts the numbers, so they're just for show. So if you're sitting there nodding your head to any of those symptoms, the next question is obvious. Why? Why does this keep happening? Let's dig into the 4 root causes that turn a really promising strategy into just another failed project. First big reason, the strategy is treated like a fun thinking exercise, not a decision-making system. See, a slide deck can give you the feeling of clarity without forcing you to make any hard choices. A real working strategy has to force trade-offs. It's really all about deciding what you're not going to do. If your strategy doesn't make you say no to a few good ideas, then sorry, it's not a strategy. Second, the strategy is totally separated from the actual operations. This is where good intentions go to die. The strategy lives up here in the clouds, in the executive meetings, while the real work is happening down there on the ground. But look, any strategy that doesn't wrestle with real-world stuff like your cash flow, your team's actual skills, or your clunky internal processes is doomed to fail the second it makes contact with reality. Third, it gets delivered without any real accountability. A list of recommendations is not a plan. A real strategy has clear ownership, like who is on the hook for this outcome. And it has a regular rhythm, a cadence for checking in and making sure things are moving. Without that, you're just hoping for the best, and momentum fizzles out. And the fourth reason is that the strategy is just way too big for the company's current stage. A growing business does not need 12 different top priorities. That just creates insane complexity and guarantees that everything gets done halfway. What you actually need are fewer priorities put in the right order so the team can actually get some wins on the board and build momentum. Okay, so we've spent enough time on the problems. We've diagnosed it. Now, what's the cure? Let's flip this around and talk about what actually works. How you can build a strategy that's designed from the ground up to survive in the real world. First off, you need to start thinking of your strategy as a decision-making system. Its main job is to be a filter. So when a shiny new idea comes along, you run it through the filter. Does this get us closer to our main goal? If we do this, what do we have to give up? Having this filter in place cuts down on endless debates and clarifies what's important right now. Next, your strategy has to be embedded inside your operations. It can't be this separate thing you look at once a quarter. It needs to show up in your weekly leadership meetings, in how you decide where to spend money and assign people. If your strategy isn't part of the weekly rhythm of the business, it's not a strategy, it's just a document. A strategy that works also has really tight feedback loops. Look, in a fast-moving business, the goal isn't to be perfectly right on day one. That's impossible. The goal is to learn faster than the market can punish you. This means you treat every action as a test of your assumptions. You measure, you learn, you adjust. The strategy is a living, breathing thing. And finally, the strategy has to be sized to your reality. It needs to respect your actual limits, your cash, your team's bandwidth, all of it. A great strategy for an SMB finds those few key leverage points where a little bit of effort creates a massive impact, and then it focuses everything there. This is why when you're small, clarity and focus are so much more powerful than having a bunch of options. All right, enough theory. What does this actually look like when the rubber meets the road? Let's quickly walk through 3 really common business scenarios where focusing on delivery changes absolutely everything. First up, a true classic, the founder-run funnel. The situation is simple. Every single sale depends on the founder's personal network. The real problem here isn't just about sales. It's that the strategy is a system of dependence. So the solution isn't just sell more. It's to build a repeatable, measurable sales process that someone else can run. That turns the founder from being the bottleneck into being the manager of a system that can actually grow. Next, let's talk about the everything project company. The context, 10 projects are all running at once and they're all top priority, which, as we know, means that nothing is the priority. The diagnosis here is that the company is confusing aspiration with a plan, and it's burning everyone out. The fix has to be ruthless. You cut the priorities down to 2 or 3, and you publicly stop work on the others. Making that trade-off is the strategy. The result is you get momentum back, and your team starts to trust leadership again. In our third one, the KPI mirage. You've got dashboards, right? But every single meeting turns into a debate about whether the data is even right to begin with. The diagnosis is simple. You can't execute a strategy on bad data. The intervention is to build a proper measurement system. You agree on a handful of key numbers, you define exactly what they mean, and you review them consistently. When you do that, meetings magically turn from arguments back into decision-making sessions. You know, all of these fixes, building systems, being ruthless about priorities, getting the data right, they all point to one huge fundamental shift in thinking. This is really the one big idea we want you to walk away with. And here it is. We have to stop thinking about strategy as a noun, a static thing, like a document or a deck that you have. We have to start seeing it as a verb, an active, living tool that the business uses. It's a system. It's a filter that guides your choices every single day. Because once that mental shift happens, everything changes. Your meetings get faster, your teams are actually aligned, and you start to see real, tangible progress. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about for your own business. Is your strategy a noun, just sitting in a folder somewhere, or is it a verb, out there driving action every single day?